What's up guys, Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com. So in today's video, we're gonna do something a little bit different, and we're gonna use a model to create an architectural design or presentation board with layout. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. And so this isn't something I've really done on the channel before, but it is kind of interesting to me, and I would like to branch out a little bit in the content that I've been creating. Basically, what I wanted to do is, if you've ever seen these like architectural presentation boards, and you can see a ton of them on Pinterest, I'm not even sure if I'm using the right terminology, but basically what they are is they're boards that describe things about a space, right? So they might have like different colors in them, they have 3D images, they're basically like running you through a space and kind of some benefits of them, that kind of thing. And I wanted to walk through kind of how you might do that using SketchUp and Layout. And so if you want to follow along using this space, this is a 3D warehouse model that I've downloaded. It's the seating area by Daniel Ung. And so you can download this and follow along if you want to. But basically, when you think about this, what this is doing is, us taking a bunch of different images and just kind of laying them out in layout. And so the first thing you might do with something like this is you might actually go into layout and set up your page template. And so in this case, we're going to use a different page template than we've used in the past, right? Because we don't want this to be a landscape. What we want this to be instead is we want this to be a portrait document. And so when we first open up layout, you can go into your templates right here, and you can go ahead and you can pick one of these documents, right? So in this case, for example, I'm just going to go with a letter portrait. That might not be the ideal size, but I think it's going to work for what we're going to do here. I just want this to be something that's more of a portrait orientation. And so really what we need to do is there's a couple different things, right? We need to set up some views in our SketchUp model, and then we also need to kind of set up our layout over here in layout, actually. Okay, and so one thing that you probably are going to want to do, and this is something I get into more in my course, by the way, so if you do want to learn more about how to use SketchUp and Layout, you can check out the SketchUp Essentials course, which is currently on sale through Friday at 11:59 p.m. But what you're going to want to do in this situation is these are all going to go on different layers, all of the elements that go into layout. And so you can get as detailed or not as you want to when you first start blocking this out. But for me, for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my text on a layer. And you might actually have multiple layers for this. I'm just going to have it on one layer right now, but I'm just going to start by putting a title in here. And so I'm just going to use a text box, and I'm just going to type in the words cozy nook. And so once I've placed this in here, what I want to do is I want to adjust my font, right? So we're going to select this, we're going to go into our text style, and I'm probably going to use Roboto. That's a good font for this, I think. And so in this one in particular, we're probably going to go with this Roboto slab, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring the size of this font way up, right? And so what I want is I want this font right here to be sitting in this space. And we may want to make this a little bit bigger just so all of the text actually shows up in here. So this is kind of where my title is going to go. And then I'm going to have a little paragraph in here that talks about the Nook. And one of the benefits of AI, which I don't want to get too far into in this video, but I didn't really want to type anything up describing a cozy Nook space, so I just had ChatGPT give me something. So I'm just going to take all of this, we're going to bring this font down, and this one's probably just going to be like the Roboto slab for right now. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this text in here. And so again, you can kind of adjust that size if you want that to be larger or smaller. I think it probably looks pretty good in this 10-point font. But if you look at this, we've got this text in here, but we want to add something else in here to make this kind of like jump out a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is I want to add a box right here, but behind this text. And so the way that we might do that is, if you remember, the layers in layout are a little different than like tags in SketchUp. They actually stack on top of each other like something might in like Photoshop or InDesign. So what I can do is under my text layer, I can just add something and call it like design elements, something like that. But notice how if I put that layer under text and then I put things on it, it's going to stack the text on top of this item. Right? So then what I can do is I can take this box and I'm going to go up into my fill, and I'm going to change the color. And so we're just looking for something that's going to make this stand out. A lot of it kind of depends on the colors that you select for your document itself. We may go with something like this for right now, but we've got some text in here. One other thing that we probably don't want is you probably don't want the stroke on the outside, so you can just click on the button right here in order to make that kind of go away. Now, one thing I wish that we could do in layout that I don't think that we can, if anybody knows that you can, let me know. It would be nice if you could put like a little drop shadow behind this, but I don't think there's any way of doing that in layout right now. But now what I want to do is I want to start adding some images to this sheet. And so in order to add those images to our sheet, we need to go back into our SketchUp model and we need to start adding some different views. Those views are what we're going to bring in to layout. And in this case, right, I want to start with kind of this overall view right here. And so I'm just going to go up to View, Animation, Add Scene. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and update the selected style right here, but we're just going to call this something like perspective. And so what that is that's the perspective view that we want to put as kind of an overall view. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. Okay, and so now what we can do is we can go back into layout. And a lot of you have probably used this file send to layout button. You can definitely do that, but you can also inside of layout just do a file insert and you can go find that SketchUp file and just double click on it in order to insert a viewport for your space. And so what I want to do in this situation is notice how this gives me a perspective view into this space. And so what I want to do is I want to resize this until I get the image that I'm looking for in this space. And I can resize that by holding the Shift key, and that'll resize the image while also keeping this keeping the proportions of the image right here. So just hold the Shift key when you're dragging on these corner pieces, and that's going to allow us to resize these images like this. And so what I've done is I've basically created this 3D image right here that gives me kind of an overview of this space. Now, what I want to do next, and you can kind of mess around with the way that things align in here, depending on if you want this to be on a grid or if you want it to be a little bit more freeform, that's kind of up to you. But now what I want to do is I want to add a floor plan of the space. And so to add a floor plan of the space, what we want to do is we want to orbit until we can kind of see everything, and then we want to add a section plane. So we want to click on section plane over here. You can tap the up arrow key in order to lock this to the blue axis, but I'm just going to click in here and that's going to give me the ability to create this section. And so I just want to go into a top-down view like this, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And one thing you want to do in order to get this into a true plan view is you want to go up into your camera settings and go to parallel projection. So notice how then this is kind of straight up and down. Now, a couple other things that you're going to want to do. So first off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to update this style. So the style right here currently is showing our section plane, which we don't want. So we can go into our settings over here, toggle that section plane off. The other thing I don't like is it's filling in these walls where that section cut is, and I'm not necessarily the world's biggest fan of that. So what I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to turn section fills off. The other thing that I want to do is I want to go into my face settings and I want to set my back color to white as well. So I'm just going to change this to a 255, 255, 255 like this. Now you could come in here and play with your line weights as well. So I might turn profiles on just so I can see those. But then the other thing that I want to do is I want to change my background. So I can adjust my background by going into my background settings. I'm just going to toggle that background to white like this. And so what that's done is that's given us kind of a floor plan of this space. So now I'm just going to right click and I'm going to add a view, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to update the selected style like this. You could create a new one as well, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this plan view. And honestly, I kind of want this to be black and white. So I'm going to go into my face settings. And at this point, we're probably better off just going into my default styles and picking like the hidden line style. And again, we're going to want to go back, turn those section fills off, and we're probably going to want to turn our profiles on just so we get some kind of line work in here on these items. And you can make those lines thicker or not by adjusting your section line width like this. So if you want them all to be kind of the same, you can set them to a 1, and then all of your walls are going to be the same. I'm probably going to set this to a 2, and then I'm going to go into my profiles and also set that to a 2. Then everything kind of has that same line thickness. But then we can update this. We're going to update the selected style, and we're going to do a save. And so when we do a save, what that's going to do is that's going to save this with this plan view, and then we can jump over into layout and we can make adjustments to that, or we can use the viewport. So the way that I want to do that in this situation is you could either insert a new viewport, or you could hold the control key and click and drag this, and that's going to give you a copy of this viewport. And so we want to make sure that we update our model reference so that it pulls the newest version of the SketchUp model after we've saved it. But then we just want to right click, go back into our scenes, and we want to pick that plan view scene that we created over here. But now we're just going to take this, and first off, I want to click on the box for preserve scale so that I can resize this and make sure that we're getting everything in here like this. But then we're just going to take this, and since I don't really need this to be to scale, now we can uncheck that preserve scale. And now if I click and drag, it's actually going to resize that image. Now that gets a little bit weird because this can kind of jump around on you a little bit. So you want to get the size kind of close, and then you can click on preserve scale again, and it's going to let you resize that bounding box. And remember that you can use the keys on your keyboard to kind of nudge this around as well. But now we've got kind of an image of the space in here. And so one thing that you're going to want to do with the image of the space is probably add some things like dimensions in order to make this look a little bit better. And so in order to do that, what I would do is I would go ahead and I would create a new layer. And I want to put this on top of my design elements like this. But I just want to call this one annotations. And on that annotations layer, what we're going to do is we're going to add some dimensions in here real quick. And one thing you might think about doing is taking this and changing it to a vector style instead of a raster style. That's going to give you that smoother line work. But now on that annotations layer, I just want to come in here and add some dimensions really quick. So I'm just going to add a dimension from here to here. I'll add a dimension from here to here, and maybe another dimension over here. And then we could also add a few others, like on the interior of this space. I'm not necessarily a gigantic fan of the way these walls have been modeled, but I think it'll be good enough for what we're doing right now. Well, one of the benefits of putting this on its own layer is now you can right click on it and you can select all of those entities, right? So everything on that layer is going to get selected. Well, I want to make a few changes to the way these dimensions look. So I'm going to go into my dimension style, and I'm going to go ahead and set this so that all of the dimensions are aligned and are also placed in the middle of these dimension lines. I also want to set my precision to, we'll call it 1/8 for right now. And I want to change my font style as well. So you can change your font style in the text style button right here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick that Roboto again. And you could also adjust the sizes of these if you wanted to. So in my case, I probably want these to be a little bit smaller. But we're able to add dimensions. We could also add annotations if we wanted to do that. So I could add like a label, for example. And then we could adjust the font on those like this. And then we might also want to add some elevations in this view. And you might do this differently depending on what you're trying to do. All I really want is I just want some images that are color of this space. And so what I want to do is there's a quick, easy way to do this. As long as you don't need the line work in here, you can actually toggle into parallel projection view, and you can use the little person right here. That's the first person camera view, and you can actually click and drag in a direction. So when you click and drag in a direction that's along the axes, so what this is going to do is this is going to clip everything out behind your camera. But from there, I can just take this and I can add a view. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call this bookshelf. right here. So now I've got that view. I also want to add a couple other views, and I'm going to do this pretty quick. All right, so then from there, you're going to do a File, Save. And then you're going to go over into Layout, and you're going to make a copy of one of these viewports. In this case, I'm going to pick this one. So I'm just going to hold the Control key and drag this down in order to create a duplicate. And one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I right-click and I update my model reference so that I'm getting the newest version of my model. But now we can take this, right-click on it, and we can pick, like for this one, I'm going to pick the bookshelf right here. And so I've got the bookshelf on the wall, and I'm also going to hold the Control key and make a copy over here. And let's go ahead and add another one of these, but this one is going to have the furniture in it like this. And I'm going to go ahead and tap the arrow keys in order to align the top of the wall like this. But one thing you might want to do is clip out some of that extra. And so to clip out some of the extra, what you can do is you can just add a rectangle. And then when you add a rectangle, over top, you just want to drag a box across the stuff that you want to keep. So in this case, it's going to be just the stuff that's under this box. And I'm going to go ahead and hold the Control key and drag this across so that I can keep it aligned. We'll go ahead and drag this one over a little bit. But what you can do is you can select this viewport and then hold Shift and select this box. You can right-click and you can click on Create Clipping Mask. And so when you create a clipping mask, what that's going to do is that's going to clip out everything that isn't directly behind your box. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this over. I'm going to move this over. All right, so now we've got our floor plan. And so one of the things we can do is we can just paste an image directly in. Like I just took a snip online of a similar looking product. Obviously it's not the same product, but it's something similar. So we could drop some images in here. We could even clip them out if we wanted to in order to add like a round background or something like that. But we could draw a line, and we'll probably want this on the annotation layer, but we could draw a line like this. So I'm just going to select it. And in this case, we want this to have a start arrow, which is going to be larger, maybe like a 10 or something like that. And then we don't want this to have a fill, so we can toggle that fill off. But you could take this whole thing, adjust the line thickness if you wanted to do that. So you could add arrows and other things. You could even create like a circle around this if you wanted to do that. So we're just going to toggle the fill off on this circle. There we go. Actually, we might want to toggle the fill on and then just put the images on top of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image, I'm going to move it to the images layer, and then it can be on top of this shape. And then the last thing we might do is we might put some kind of a pattern behind this in order to make it a little bit more interesting. And so if we decided to do that, what we might do is we might create another layer, and we're going to put that like way down below all our design elements. So we're just going to call this pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw, we're going to start maybe right here. We're going to draw a line across, draw a line down, and over like this. But then we could take this and we could either use one of the built-in patterns, or you could add like an image or something like that as a texture. But you can use this in order to create a little bit more visual interest in here as well. And then you could come in here and get creative with clipping planes if you didn't like the way that this is kind of like blocking out that pattern or other things. You could definitely fix that using clipping planes. And so one of the nice things about this is how easy it is to make changes. So let's say, for example, I decided that I wanted these to be black and white and I wanted this to be color. I could just jump back into SketchUp, and when I jump back into SketchUp, I could just take my plan view and I could just set it to more of a color view like this that's actually going to show texture. So if I update that, and then I also take my furniture, and we're going to change this to a hidden line style, and we'll probably go with that one that we already created right here, but I can update that. But let's say we wanted to toggle this one to a hidden line style. So I'm going to update this right here, and I'm going to save my model. Well, now, if I go back into layout, all I've really changed is styles having to do with those views, right? So I can just go into File, Document Setup, and I can update that model reference. That's going to update the reference for everything in this model, but notice how this is going to change to color. This is going to change to black and white because I changed those scenes in SketchUp. Now, this one right here, you are going to want to make sure that you set that to like a hybrid so that you actually get the textures in here. So we're going to go over here, do a hybrid. So now if you look at that document, now you've got color in here, and then you've got black and white down here. So you can make those changes really quickly. All right, so if you do want to learn more about how to use layout, you can check out the SketchUp Essentials course. I will link to that on this page. It's on sale through end of the day Friday. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, leave a comment down below. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.